Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am very happy to present the U.S. Navy Captain Gary Yuri Tabach, and we shall have a very interesting discussion about very actual aspects and problems. My name is Maria Maksakova, and I am glad to perform this debut.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for taking this initiative on creating a petition for the U.S. Government, for the United States citizens. You put it very eloquently, and I hope we're going to have as many people as possible who are not indifferent to what is going on today in the world, to what is going on with the Ukrainian nation, and to what is going on and the effect that it has on all of us, and sign your petition that you've put so much effort into.
Thank you. It looks like our mission in charge, I would even say reconnaissance in force, in order to unblock the action of the Lend-lease law had success. Obviously, the petition on the platform change.org, named Stop Genocide, Unblock Lend-lease, was even recommended on the Ukrainian national TV marathon Freedom. I want to thank you, first of all, Gary, for the immense job you've done to make the situation around the Lend-lease Act clear to Ukrainians. May I ask you to explain to our American viewers what is actually going on with Lend-lease and why is it so essential to unblock it?
Well, unfortunately, nothing is going on with the land lease. Unfortunately, President Biden nor anyone in his administration has even mentioned land lease since it was signed on the 9th of May. So, by law, 60 days later, the president has to inform the Congress what kind of technique and that he has created and what people he has appointed to make the land lease work so it goes in a faster fashion to expedite immediate need for Ukraine, which includes weapons, food, aid for the refugees, medicine, whatever it is needed to protect Ukraine and to stop this war, to finally kick the Russians out of Ukrainian land, just the way it was done in World War II, where we were helping our allies immediately with everything that we've got. Unfortunately, none of it is happening. What is happening that we're giving packages that has to be voted. Again, it takes longer and it's a long term that have to be voted by the Congress. And in those packages, there's a lot of political play because those packages include other things besides help for Ukraine. And it's usually bipartisan. So as long as those packages are proposed by the president and the Democratic Party, it is more beneficial to them because they play politics. That's what politicians do. Land lease cuts the politics out, and all the Ukrainians are going to get is the hardware or the items that they need. Unfortunately, it's not happening. The president has not given a report to the Congress already, since 9th of May, way more than 60 days passed by. But what I think where you came through is that you're addressing the Americans to go ahead and push the administration to do what they're supposed to do. Many Ukrainians don't understand that it is not Ukrainians who voted for the land lease. It is the American people that voted for land lease. It is the law. So through our Congress, this is how our country is set up. We have a voice through our Congress, through our representation, and then the government has to perform what we want. So many Ukrainians are saying, well, we're getting help, it's enough. I mean, we can't ask for more. No, it has nothing to do with the Ukrainians. It is us, the Americans, who have spoken, and we said, give Ukrainians everything they need to get rid of a modern day Hitler who is pushing the world towards the World War III and maybe a nuclear Armageddon. And so it is. It is again. I think that your initiative is extremely important by having such petition that it will be signed not only by the Ukrainians, who are a little bit afraid because they think they're going to upset the administration of the United States, but also by the Americans who should demand that the government performs to their will, to what they wanted to be done, because they voted for it. So I thank you very much for it. You're one of the few people who understood that, and your endeavor is not gonna go on not unnoticed. So as we say in our military, when the Ukrainians are a little bit afraid to rock the boat, as we say in the military, we say it's a squeaky wheel that gets oil. If you're not going to get any oil. So we need to make some noise. And we need Ukrainians to help us do that instead of saying everything is fine, everything is okay. Everything is not okay. Many Ukrainians are dying. Many children, civilians, infrastructure are suffering a great deal.
Everything is far not okay. Unfortunately, you are completely right, and we are every day we keep receiving these videos and photos, and um, well, it's terrifying, really terrifying. And should we have enough weaponry generally, of course, it would look absolutely differently by the moment now, because it is already the 8th month going on of Russian aggression against Ukraine, unprovoked aggression. As soon as I made that petition, first of all, I want to thank you, Gary, once again, because the idea of doing that petition um, came while we had our first interview. That was several days ago. And I think it's very cool that something we began developed so quickly. And many of my American friends were highly surprised. They keep mailing to me and writing to me that why should it be unblocked? When was it blocked? They're sending to me the law. It was voted by 417 members of the Congress, and it is like super plurality. It is something not very common. I mean, it is something which consolidated all the politicians and of course the American nation. And I want to thank very much America. God bless America. It is really absolutely something divine that you were going to provide on May the 9th. It was something like we were crying because we were so happy when we read about the Lend-lease that is about to start. And now you are completely right. We are in a position where many, if not say almost everyone, thinks that Lend-lease exists. Well, it does exist on the paper, I mean, and that it is working. How should we talk with those people who think that the mechanism works? How can I convince them that it is not true and that it is something that is written on the paper but not done?
Well, I think you're doing it. You've been doing it since that's how I learned about you, because my friends and my have sent me your videos where you're addressing it, where you're addressing that it's not enough help. And I was, it was only few of us who kept saying it, that Lend-lease is not non-existent. It's a myth. It's symbolic. It's not what people expecting. It's not what soldiers and the warriors at the front are expecting. So when I watched your video, I realized that you're one of the few good men, and now a woman that's aware of this situation. What we can do is just continue and try to educate the public as an American public, and Ukrainian public and other countries. I mean, a lot. No, this today there's nothing more important than the war in Ukraine in the world. There's nothing that brought us to a more danger and destruction of our world or the way we know it today. And we should not stand and watch as a nation is being destroyed, as the cities are being wiped out in Europe by a tyrant who we've allowed to rise again in Europe to do such things. And I think at this point, Ukrainian people have proven that they're freedom loving, that freedom and independence is not just empty words for them, that they're willing to fight and not to run or surrender, and they will not. It's already proven there's going to be no 48, 72 hours of destruction of Ukraine, that the president of Ukraine is not an actor or a clown, that the president of Ukraine is as a war president of a wartime who's got stamina and will to fight, that the Ukrainian generals are not drunk and stupid, that they're highly educated and highly motivated, and they know exactly what they're doing. They're not Soviet type of generals, and all the top generals, and actually the entire Ukrainian army today exists of none of the people who've served in the Soviet army compared to the Russian army, to the Russian generals or so-called generals. I can't even call them generals because, as far as I'm concerned, they're war criminals. They're maniacs. What they're doing, and Putin himself is a KGB, is a Soviet thug. He's a KGB thug compared to Zelensky, who really doesn't probably even remember much of Soviet Union because he was a child. So, and Ukrainian soldiers have proven to be highly motivated and loving their land and willing to die for it. So there's no way of beating that army. So we might as well help them now and try to save as many lives as possible and give them offensive weapons. We haven't given them any of the offensive weapons. So for them to go in a counteroffensive, they need a heavy equipment. They need tanks, they need artillery, they need air support, and of course, what they need, Ukraine, first of all, they need more important is anti-air defenses and against the missiles that falling on the cities, on the civilian homes, on the people, and so they can at least cover some of the sky. That's what the president was asking in the first days of war, to close the skies. Well, you probably can't close the skies because Ukraine is a huge country, but the major cities is definitely possible, and we should do it immediately. Immediately. As you say that your friends in the United States and many people that I know in the United States saying, why should we help Ukraine? Why should we do this or that? Well, firstly, I want to say that and why should we sign this petition? What do we care? It's a problem between two old Soviet communist brothers. And my point is, firstly, it's a right thing to do. It is just the right thing to do for us if we think we're humans and if we think we live in a civilized world. So that's first of all. Secondly, we have all the equipment, we have all of the instruments for Ukrainians to end this war and to end the killing very quickly. Uh, why? Because we've been building it and we've been storing it because we were gonna planning to fight the Soviet Union and then to fight Russia. So we have all this. We have all that hard equipment. So why can't we give some of it, 1/10 of it, to Ukrainians to do the job that we were planning to do, and to finish all this and to save? It's economically right. It will save lives. It will save economies. It will save. It will not create a refugee disaster, and it will prevent a nuclear Armageddon. So I do not understand if our Congress, majority of the Congress, as a matter of fact, today our Congress does not agree on anything in two different camps. Even inside of their own camps, they don't agree on a lot of things. The more liberal Democrats, more conservative Democrats, and Republicans who are rhinos and who are not rhinos, who are blaming each other and fighting with each other. This is the only subject that all of the Congress agrees. Democrats, left, right, Republicans, rhinos, not rhinos, all agree that Ukraine must get Lend-lease, that Ukraine must get everything we can provide them with so they will bring the stop to this war. And the only ones who are not acting on it is the administration of a White House. And that is why it is so important that all of us, not Ukrainians, not Americans, not Jews and Christians, not blacks and whites, but all of us as humans, sign this petition and say, we're all telling you, Mr. President, do your job. If you politicians got us to this point where we're at the brink of a nuclear war, then at least give us the warriors, the soldiers to fight this war. Give us the instruments to bring the end to this violence, to this killing of innocent lives.
Thank you, Gary. And I would like to add, if I may, that NATO itself was built up in order to stand against the Russian, the Soviet aggression at that moment, and all that missiles and equipment and weaponry was done because the taxpayers of these previous times uh, basically paid for all that weaponry that maybe is now even under conservation. You wouldn't use it anymore, and probably there is no other war where you could possibly use it. Uh, and at the same time, Russia now attacks Ukraine exactly with that Soviet weaponry, exactly against what you have uh, the forces, everything that you've built up before. And so Russia was gathering from all over the world all that previously produced in Soviet Union weaponry. All the republics of the 15 republics of Soviet Union, as well as some of the countries in Europe and even all over the world who were allies of Soviet Union, were helping Soviet Union to build up all that weaponry. Now Russia basically gathered that whole weaponry and now is attacking right with that weaponry Ukraine. So that is why I am exactly what you said, why I think that is also from a moral, and not only from moral but even from economical point of view, it's worth finally give that uh, in American way old weaponry. Maybe it's already not being used in the US Army, but it would probably be the solution for us in Ukraine. You have led similar NATO programs, well, not as big as Lend-lease, but still very important in Poland.
Yes.
What kind of weaponry may be handed over to Ukraine under the Lend-lease Act? And do you have specific recommendations for Ukraine?
I think that the most important right now, immediately, all of it should have been done a long time ago. Definitely should have been started on the 10th of May. But that's why it is of so importance that it starts now. First of all, the priority is air defense. It's something that you will be able. You yourself are saying that the sirens are going off all over the Ukraine. I mean, it's impossible to live. It's impossible to sleep. It's impossible to send kids to school. It is impossible to go and listen to the opera. And important is to be able to shoot down Russian missiles that are falling on the civilian objects and protect the civilian population. That is the most important. And you're saying the sirens are going off because Ukrainians at this point do not have a sophisticated system where you can capture the missiles early in its flight and predict the trajectory of the missile. So not the whole country goes into panic, but only you know where it's going to go and you shoot it down. And of course, you need the equipment to shoot it. down. All this now, all all the many European countries, NATO countries, including the United States, saying that we will provide it soon. So hopefully we will provide it soon. But again, I'm sure we will need more. Then, of course, you will need something that you will be able to advance, to do a counter offensive. And that protection eventually, of course, it's artillery, it's uh, well, air support you don't have, but it's basically going to be artillery. But eventually, you're going to have to send the infantry in, actually men and women with guns going marching into the cities, into the towns, and well, that's what you're doing now. And they need armored protection. They need tanks. They need armored personnel carriers. They need infantry fighting vehicles like Bradleys and so forth. So the armor, which will protect them and could advance them quickly, moving them forward as the enemy runs away. And of course, it would be great if we would be able to provide air support for them as well with the helicopters, with A-10 Warhogs, which will also have plenty to give. And I think that way it will bring the war to the end very quickly, and it will collapse Russia. Russia, and we will be able, and the Russians hopefully will get together and realize that Putin is leading them into the abyss, and will get rid of him, considering Russian serf mentality. Now, I also want to remind that there was a Budapest Memorandum in 1996 where Ukrainian, Belarusians, and Kazakhs gave their nuclear weapons to the Russians. United States paid for it, and some of the NATO countries, Germany, France, Great Britain, signed an assurance that if Ukraine, Belarus, and Kazakhstan give their nuclear weapons to the Russians, their their borders will be protected. Their borders will not be attacked. Russia is one of the signees, violated that, and the rest of us in that memorandum states that we have to do everything to protect Ukraine. So I do not think we're living up to our word. We're not living up to the document that we have signed, and we lose credibility. That in the future, if we would want to again come to some sort of agreement or memorandum, we will not be trusted. We will not be trusted. So I think it is important we live up to our promise in that memorandum and give Ukraine, if we don't want to get ourselves involved, at least we should give Ukraine so they can do uh, their job for us, for our job. They can do it because today I think it is already obvious. The Ukrainians have proven that today there's a World War III, that Putin and his goons are fighting against the entire world. Unfortunately, it is only Ukraine that fights for the rest of us. So at least the least we can do is provide them with the instruments to bring this killing to the end, to stop the killing. We have the instruments, we have plenty of it. So please sign the petition that Maria has created. She put a lot of work into it. Sign the petition. Ask your friends to sign. Ask your relatives to sign. Ask your pets to sign. Whoever whoever wants to live in a safe world where we can go and listen Maria's opera, then we need to do it. This is the least we can do. We don't have to go fight. We don't have to send our children to fight and put them in harm's way. But all we have to do is sign. It doesn't cost us anything, but it will give a signal. It will give a sign to our representation in Washington to put more pressure on the president, and will put the pressure on our politicians. If they don't act on it, in November, we will change them. I'm not talking about the party. We can change another Democrat for another Democrat. We can change another Republican for another Republican, or vice versa. But the thing is, those are the ones that are inactive, coward, or do not care. We will change them. And we have, and through this petition, we're letting them know that.
Thank you, Gary, once again. I wonder if Americans realize actually what is Putin himself and his propaganda saying almost every day. He is doing as if for his, well, audience, that he's fighting already with NATO. He keeps saying about his plans to destroy even America itself. So I sometimes wonder, do the specific organizations watch that? Do they know about what he's saying all the time? These are really horrifying threats that he keeps doing, and these threats are directed basically mainly uh, to United States.
Yes,
Um,
hope so. I hope they do, but I think he will continue until he's stopped. Why will he continue? Well, firstly, I think because he's allowed to do that, because we let him do it. We let him get away with absolutely everything. We let him get away with genocide of Chechen people, and we ignored it. The world, I'm talking about the civilized world, ignored it. We let him attack Georgia and annex Georgian territory, and we sent with Secretary of State Clinton, with Hillary Clinton, with a reload, as they said, or restart button. Then he invaded Ukraine and annexed Crimea and started the war in Donbass, shot down a civilian airplane, a Malaysian airplane, which is not even a NATO airplane or a European airplane. It has nothing to do with this war. We let him get away with that. He shot down a Polish airplane with the entire leadership of Poland, including the president of Poland, and we let him get away with that. And now we're letting get away with a full-scale war and destruction of an entire nation. And we're still trying to convince him to negotiate, or trying to convince this crocodile, this alligator, to become a vegetarian. And he will not. As we've learned from World War II and other wars in history, these kind of leaders or these kind of tyrants will not be pacified. They only get fed on it. And today we see the danger in it, because again, I think it's my opinion that the government of the United States um, has failed in negotiations with Saudi Arabia and OPEC, and the prices of oil are going to go up again, and that will feed Russian war machine. So we need to give the weapons to Ukraine to stop this. Clearly, we're not capable of doing it in a diplomatic or a political way or economically.
well, they're trying to build up a price limit for Russia. I'm not sure it's going to involve all the countries that are buying his oil, but it's the way they're trying to compensate. I mean, in Europe, these high oil prices, which are really feeding Putin. Um, the point is, I wonder if really American people, realize that Putin is all the time targeting in his speeches uh, the United States. They are doing some different films, cartoons over how exactly they would destroy a part of United States. This is things that I think should be told more openly in United States, so that people realize that he, even if at the moment he is, well, he stuck in a way in Ukraine, because of the bravery, because Ukrainians are heroes, and President Zelensky is a hero, and the Ukrainian army are heroes. Um, and he stuck in a way, yes, and now he has to. But even now, when he got stuck, he still says that they're fighting not only Ukrainians but also NATO. And we know that NATO is not involved in the conflict. We have no NATO troops in Ukraine. But it's like for him, not the enemy in the face of Ukraine is for his audience, for his public, not big enough. So he's trying to make more important, saying that they're fighting already with NATO. And that's why I think that really, if the enemy already is targeting you now at the moment, maybe literally, but it means that he, well, can begin it physically also. I even think that maybe I should make a film like we did about Lend-lease, the same thing about what they talk all the time about, what they say, what they keep saying. He himself and all his propaganda will translate it into English. And maybe then people will wake up and realize that he is already threatening the United States and the NATO.
Sure,
My
sure.
question, sorry,
I,
excuse me.
that cartoon you're talking about, the missile landed in Miami, right where I live. So it wasn't. It was threatening. It is very important for us to try and do everything and use all the means to educate people in what is going on and with which danger that we're dealing with. And again, I think people appreciate what we're doing because we're not getting paid for it. We're absolute volunteers. We're putting a lot of our time and effort into this. So we're not representing anyone's interests. I don't know President Trump or President Biden or President Zelensky. I've never seen them in my life. So I'm sure you, well, maybe you did, but I'm definitely they've seen you as a performer, and but this is why I think people will trust us more than they will trust any kind of news media that works for some oligarch or some interest groups like CNN or Fox News or BBC or Voice of America, because you and I and several of our friends were independent in this. So it is only comes from our heart, and because we're not indifferent to stand by and watch people getting killed.
Every time we meet Gary, we have a good idea for the
The next
next project.
you have,
Return,
I'm
well, no, you have. Returning to the technical moments about the land lease law, um, about the photos, I've seen dozens of square meters. Maybe I am exaggerating, but it looked like that, dotted with military equipment, for example, in Arizona. Can this equipment be transferred to Ukraine? Because it looks much more profitable because its production was already paid, as we said, by the taxpayers of previous decades. And this would not require new spendings and will not place an additional burden onto American budget today. Is it technically possible to reconservate, so to say, that kind of weaponry and transfer it to Ukraine?
well. There are three ways that Ukraine can get weapons. One way is like when we decommission something, like a ship, or now we're going to decommission 160 or 180 Warhogs A-10s. That's for the for infantry, the air support airplanes, um, or any equipment. Late, not too long ago, the Humvees, those like the trucks, half trucks that we used in the military, we have decommissioned them. We've taken them out of service. There are thousands, hundred thousands of them probably, many of them in Europe. We have to utilize them. What means we have to conserve them. We have to put them in preservation. So preservation costs money, and sometimes we decide that giving that equipment to our allies is cheaper than preserving it and keeping it. So, like for Poland, for instance, I was involved in transferring two ships, four helicopters, lots of equipment for special operations, because we didn't want to preserve. It was cheaper to provide to our new ally this NATO equipment, which was, yes, it was not new, it was used, but it was just like new because our equipment kept in a very good shape and we preserve it for later use if we need to. So this is one way. It doesn't cost, as long as it doesn't cost the United States government extra money, extra funds. So we save money from preserving it and we're giving it away. So that is one way that can be done. For instance, with Warhogs, with Humvees, there's no need for training on Humvees. Ukrainian soldiers can drive, two pedals, the same, that car. It's a truck. I mean, maybe some mechanics will need some help to fixing it or maintaining it, but it's not much. Second one is this packages where we give money. And there's different systems of giving money. There's a presidential drawdown, there's no sales, and different ways. But it's basically packages where we approve, where we give money to Ukraine, and with that money we say you can buy this, this, and that. So far, it has been that they can only buy defensive uh, weaponry, not offensive weaponry. And uh, if they don't spend it, then we take it back. So, for instance, it was 6 billion, but Ukrainians, we were able to provide them only with $4 billion. So they took $2 billion, came back to the United States. I'm rounding those numbers close. And the third way is, which is the most beneficial for Ukraine, and that is when already the world is in danger. This is like uh, happens very rarely. Basically, this is the second time it happens. Is a Lend-lease. This is where we take the equipment, the one that we have in service that's working, and we send it to Ukraine because we have 10 tanks right now, but we can spare 2 tanks, take them out of service, and send them to Ukraine. Uh, and we can take them in from preservations from the desert, as you say. And it's, you said square meters. I can assure you it's hundreds of square miles or kilometers. And we have quite a bit stored and preserved in different deserts. We have airplanes there preserved. We have all kind of heavy equipment preserved there, guns, howitzers, tanks, armored personnel carriers, uh, trucks, all kinds of vehicles. We can take that and also provide it to Ukraine. But not only weapons, we can also provide medicine, we can provide anything that they need, communications. So it's not an individual like Musk that does it out of whatever goodness of his heart or because he wants PR for himself or whatever. Different people say different things. But it is the government, the United States government, and governments of other countries that provide steady equipment to Ukraine, communications, weapons, and so forth. So, yes, we can do that. And yes, we have plenty of it because we were preparing and we kept keeping all this to fight the Soviet Union. So we definitely now have seen that Ukrainians have kicked Russians' butt with very limited amount of their equipment. The country that is much more poor than Russia, the country that has the army 10 times smaller than the Russian army, the equipment, everything is at least 10 times less, tanks, airplanes, missile, everything less. And yet, Ukrainians will be able to repel that Russian attack and stand their ground and even conduct counteroffensive operations in certain areas. So we certainly know that if we give them that equipment, like Predators, like UAVs, they will be able to end this war very quickly. They will be able to end the regime that is in Moscow right now. We will all be safe. We will all be living in a civilized world, and hopefully our kids will have another 70 or 80 or 100 years of peace in Europe and in the world. And Ukrainians are capable of accomplishing this task. All they need is the tools, and we must provide those tools. And the way we will provide those tools, if the people will sign the petition and we take it publicly, and we will tell our politicians to have some guts and do something instead of just worrying about their reelection.
Yes, thank you. And I also think that there are several ways to find more Russian money, by the way, corrupt Russian money all around the world.
Yeah.
And maybe that could compensate some of the issues you mentioned. Um, for example, on March the 13th, 2019, Congress passed a law requiring an annual report on the search and seizure of Putin's assets. In your opinion, are those who are entrusted by Congress with the mission to search and seize the assets of Putin and his affiliates, um, are they effective today, or this might be, uh, in a way, the same as with Lend-lease, unfortunately?
Well, first of all, you're surprising me by I've never heard that there's a corruption in Russia or Ukraine or in our, but that leads to the second one, entrusted. I personally only trust God and uh, and my weapons and my trusted dog. But uh, yes, but as President Reagan says, trust but verify. All this has to be verified and checked that they're doing their job and not doing again political maneuvering somehow. There will definitely, I believe, again, I'm not a lawyer nor am I a financier, but I definitely believe that there will be reparations from the money that is already, the funds that are already arrested by the World Bank and uh, international banks, Russian money that is frozen, that they will have to go to Ukraine for rebuilding Ukraine and compensating. Well, compensation is different, and reparations. And then I hope that there will be compensation as well. For instance, Germany after World War II had to pay reparations to the damage that they caused. I mean, unfortunately, citizens, the regulars, it wasn't Hitler family or Goebbels family or Goering family. It was unfortunately just regular citizens that had to pay for reparations for many, many years to different countries, including Soviet Union. And but then the German people, and it actually helped German economy. Believe how it's interestingly it helped German economy to be revived and to advance. And then Germans also themselves decided that they have to somehow fix their image and do the right thing, and they proposed compensations, meaning that they're willing to not just reparations that they were forced to pay, but they're actually willing to pay even more. For instance, to certain groups like Jews who have suffered during World War II. For instance, my step grandfather who survived Auschwitz was getting monthly payments because his entire family was just killed, so and so forth. So hopefully, I also hope that the Russian people eventually will realize what they caused, because there's a collective responsibility. They'll have to take a collective responsibility like the Germans did, and they will conduct compensation to the Ukrainian people, to the families that suffered, to the refugees, people who lost their homes, people who lost their loved ones, and that way they will uh, mends the relationship with the Ukrainian people. Hopefully, I don't think it will be in my lifetime, but hopefully, eventually, it will happen.
Gary, I was saying about the immense corruption in Russia, and this is a very well-known subject. And money, well, we know about the frozen gold and foreign exchange reserves of Russia. These money will go, among other things, to the restoration of Ukraine. And I can, well, assume that possibly hacked assets of Putin personally and his circle will many times exceed these 350 billions that have been arrested. I'm saying that these amounts, should they be found, I hope so, that would cover any spends that United States uh, now can possibly give to Ukraine. That was my question. How can we be sure that all these amounts are going to be counted, and that this annual report that should be taken will be really precise and so on? Will that combination work?
You asking me, will that work? It will work if we want it to work. If you and I and people like us who are just normal people who entertain other people, protect other people, cure other people, teach other people, if we get involved and we watch and we demand from our politicians to do the right thing, then they will do the right thing. If we let them get away, the United States is not pure. We have corrupt politicians too. And we have politicians, they've taken money from Russia, taken money from China, or their kids. we have taken that. So we also have corruptions here. So it's up to us for us to watch and to make sure that it happens. I think it's not only Russian money that's been that have to be confiscated and taken away from the corrupt oligarchs or anybody. It's from anybody who has taken money from the people, that has taken money from the budgets, that has taken money from the pensioners or from the wounded soldiers who cannot have a prestigious because there is just no money, and somebody is flying in a jet and living, wasting money because they didn't earn it, and easy come, easy go. Yeah, thus money has to be confiscated and returned to the people. That doesn't mean we're going to rob
Mm.
rich people or people who have created something or who earned it honestly in the honest opera. But if the opera was not honest, then we certainly do. But it depends on us. It depends on us as a conscious citizens if we will take part in it. So it's not only Russian oligarchs; it's American oligarchs. It's Ukrainian people. Anybody who did it in a dishonest way and stole money from the people, they should not only be taken away from them, they should also be punished for it. So that we have law and order in our
Mhm.
society. Otherwise, anarchy is a great thing, except it doesn't work. But otherwise, it would be great. So you're absolutely right. We need to do it. We need to watch it, and maybe you and I will continue this, have this program that we say, hey, you know, there's plenty of money in it. Whether it's going to be given to Ukraine or whether it's going to be given to United States, compensate United States for the expense, I don't know. I think there are laws, and it's up to Congress. And I know that there are different. We can't just take money and take it for ourselves. For instance, in my own experience, what happened was that when we invaded Iraq, everybody thought, all right, so all the oil companies are going to be working now. Iraqi oil companies are going to be working with the United States oil companies because we liberated Iraq or Kuwait when we went into Kuwait. Uh, but that's not what happened because by our law, we thought it was going to be Chevron, Shell, all the American companies. I'm not even sure if they're American, but all the American companies that are going to go in there, and we're going to profit from it because we've spent money on a war, because our soldiers got killed, because it was an expense to the United States. But that's not what happened. By law, the Iraqi and Kuwaiti companies had to put the bids out, and whoever won the bid, there became the oil companies that were pumping oil from their ground. And you would not believe that, but the biggest bid was won by Lukoil, by the Russian oil company. So we fought the war, we liberated Iraq and Kuwait, but the ones that benefited from it, the oil company, was Lukoil, the Russian company. I'm not sure if it was done. The bids, Russians tend to win the bids somehow all the time and get the profit because there is corruption. There are things like that. But that's our job also to watch and make sure that that doesn't happen. And then we also know that some of our politicians, in that case, it was a Republican vice president. This last time it was a Democrat vice president. That last in Iraq was a Republican vice president, and his family was enriched. There is no proof that there was corruption. It's very difficult, but somehow they've benefited it. Uh,
But precisely, Lukoil is, by the way, a private company. It's not state Russian company,
oh, but
but still,
oh,
okay.
but it's still. I mean,
Um,
in the United States, all of our companies are private companies. We don't have a state company.
yes, but they do in
They
Russia.
So it was a Russian still pays taxes in Russia. Still the Russian people that benefited from it, not the American people. Although American people fought that war.
Ah, so let's do it in that way. Um, with a competent approach, it is possible that even those expenses that Lend-lease provides will be repaid at the expense of Putin's assets. It is possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but theoretically, even that what, for example, we use all of these three kinds. Yes, you said drawdown, um, conservated weaponry, and still some expenses that will happen anyway. So that part could be theoretically evened by well, these assets.
Theoretically,
Okay, is
theoretically,
there?
I think first what we need to do is win this war, bring it to the end, destroy Russian military, take the Russian nuclear weapons away from them, take their offensive weapons from them, and hopefully change the structure and the material of Russia. Um,
Mhm.
Maybe they will break up. The empire will continue to break up, and they will break up in several other countries again into smaller countries, but definitely take the nuclear weapons away from them, take the offensive weapons from them, so they will not be able to do it like we did with Japan and Germany after World War II. So they will not be able to and conduct such atrocities as they're doing now. And I think this is the most important now. And then later on, we will worry about finances, the economy. I'm sure it will somehow grow and benefit. But first, we have to create a safe environment. We cannot exist on this planet with a country like Russia in a form the way it is right now. And the longer we're afraid of approaching and facing this situation, the more threat it is, and the more danger that country creates.
Me personally, I adhere to an equidistant position regarding domestic American politics. My goal is the victory of Ukraine. And I want to thank everyone who is helping us, uh, regardless to their political views, to achieve that goal. And first of all, thank you, Gary, for what you are doing.
Thank you
Are
for
there other decision-making centers in the United States, soft power, so to say, with which it is possible to establish horizontal public relations that we did not use yet?
well, I think it's probably your counterparts, actors, stars, sports stars, movie stars. They have a huge influence when they address the public because people just simply like them, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and and they trust them. So I think you're as productive as you are. Probably should it wouldn't be a bad endeavor if you reach out to your counterparts in the United States who are known and loved, and let them also project our mission.
That's basically what I want to do. I'm searching a way to let these opinion makers know about the petition. First of all, I'm talking about great actresses, great American actresses with Ukrainian origin, like Mila Jovovich or Mila Kunis. And I am going to try to get in touch with them. Maybe thanks to our TV show now, or YouTube show to be more precise, maybe somebody would advise how and where and what exactly to do to get in touch with those um, who show um, their relation to to the war. Also, share, for example, she shows constantly the support to Ukraine and many others. Maybe our viewers would give me advice about it. And I have maybe for tonight the last question I would like to ask, because I think you know very well, this is really the subject where you know everything. Um, I'm saying about, is there anything that could possibly accelerate Ukraine's membership in NATO? And will that be a real counterbalance to the cadaver of the Soviet Union, given that it's Russia, the heir that inherited everything from the Soviet Union, and Russia now is a strategic adversary of the United States.
Well,
So, do you think that it is necessary for Ukraine to enter as soon as possible the NATO? Is there anything that could accelerate it? And would it help right now in the conflict?
well, I think that Russia is not just adversary of Ukraine or United States or even NATO. I think it's a threat to the entire world. Uh, in my personal opinion, if Russia can annex and bring somebody's territory and claim it as their own, I don't see why we cannot take Ukraine and say, okay, it's part of NATO now, and the fifth paragraph is now, there's an exception to it. But I don't think it's reality. I think it's my fantasy or my wish to be that. So I think the only realistic way for the Ukraine to be part of NATO um, is to win this war and to destroy Russian army and to show that and establish a very hard and protective borders, Ukrainian borders that are agreed on at the United Nations, uh, that they what Ukraine had their unity of the borders, and that way the NATO should ask Ukraine to be part of the alliance, because NATO at that time at that point would be the most sophisticated, uh, the most experienced military in the world, and it will bring a lot to NATO and to the table. It will reshape NATO, and this is probably what they're afraid of. It will reshape the whole relationship of the European countries, of the United Nations, whether Russia should be part of the United Nations or certainly of the Security Council. Um, and again, hopefully, Russia will not be Russia as we know it today. It will become a much different state.
Maybe not only one of them.
Right. But several Russias or different countries, which will be civilized and friendly and live in peace with their neighbors. And Ukraine can shape that. And we have to give a chance and help Ukraine to do it. But eventually it will be NATO. But on the other hand, if that will be the case, um, maybe there'll be no need for NATO any longer if Ukraine will be able to finish the job, and maybe there will be different alliances between different, the gravity will change in that sense, maybe. maybe now the important ones will be Ukraine, Poland, Great Britain, Baltic states, not France and Germany. So this is probably, this is also a political struggle that is going on right now. But of course, we're on the side of Ukraine, and it is Ukraine right now that is important, and it is Ukraine now that's changing the shape of the world, and it is in Ukraine that the nation is being built, a nation of righteousness, nation of democracy. And once Ukraine finishes the job, I think it will be a world leader for a long, long time.
Well, Ukraine tried to enter the alliance since 2008, as far as I remember, and every year that wish becomes stronger and stronger. And latest news about that, President Zelensky wrote the correspondent documents and sent them already to NATO. And now we are expecting the answers of the members of the alliance. And well, of course, let's see what they're going to say.
Right.
But now I think it would be very meaningful if NATO would support that wish and will of Ukraine.
Well, I agree, but I hope at least they will start providing weapons to Ukraine. They at least
Yes.
start with something instead of just applauding Ukraine's victories on the battlefield, but actually do something about it.
Thank you so much for helping us. And let's remind our viewers once again to support the petition. I will place the link below this video. And I hope that we are going to continue our conversation and that we will have much more interesting ideas. And with God's help, I will hope that we will embody them and life is going to be better.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you for involving me in it. And it's with a great pleasure and honor that I can be part of the struggle of Ukrainian people on the right side of history.